My name is Steve Thompson. I run technical marketing for NetEx Software. We're going to have a discussion today a little bit about DR with IBM's Tivoli 6.3 and the HyperIP Virtual WAN Optimizer. On the call with me today is Rich Vining, who owns product marketing for the Tivoli storage suite of software, and the two of us will be doing the combined webinar. The actual abstract, or the reason we're doing the call today, is to leverage TSM scalability changes and DB2, and leveraging DB2 to build pretty much an infinite database for that, for Tivoli. Allow the deduplication capabilities and automate disaster recovery around TSM, and which allows you to basically migrate to TSM 6 more compelling, giving you a reason to, with compelling features that have come out. We're going to discuss these features around replication and how TSM replication can be made to run even better than it does in a DR environment. And the possibility is there for you to accelerate a new WAN optimization technology that's in a virtual appliance to accelerate replication and backup to achieve LAN-like speeds over a link or over a WAN, basically reducing your recovery windows from hours to minutes, or in some cases up to 90%. And I want to introduce Rich Vining. He is going to introduce the few slides up front to talk about TSM, and then he'll hand it back off to me. So Rich, go right ahead, and we'll go from here.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks for having me on your call today. First of all, I apologize for my voice. I came back from vacation with a bit of a cold, and it's actually a lot better today than it was yesterday. So, for those of you that are familiar with TSM, it's been in the marketplace for a very long time, about 18, 19 years now, and it's gone through progression of invention and improvements over that time, but we've really taken it up a notch over the last 3 years, first with version 6.1 in 2009, and then increasing into 6.2 and 6.3 over the last 2 years, really trying to hone in on some really key problem areas or pain points that our customers are feeling, which I've listed here at the top of this slide. One is data growth. Everybody's experiencing data growth. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. Data is growing at 40 to 60 or even more % per year. And having to maintain that data, being able to restore that data, being able to manage that data is really getting out of control. So we're really focusing on scalability and manageability of this data growth. And the second one is management of increasingly complex IT environments. We've got data scattered all over the place now. You've got remote offices, branch offices, mobile workers, offices scattered around the world, DR sites. You know, how are you managing all that kind of data? Plus, there's different kinds of systems. Not only different operating systems and different hardware platforms, but now also virtualized systems. And that gets to be complicated. Also, escalating business service levels. It used to be that if you lost a system, you lost an office, it'd be painful, but you get through it because there would be backup ways of getting your business done. That's not the case anymore. Everything requires online access. If you go down, your customers go down, everything stops, your customers will go someplace else. So business service level requirements are key to business continuity. And then, of course, constrained budgets. Everybody wants to do more with less. At the end of the day, we're talking about backup here, right? Backup and recovery. It's an insurance policy. It doesn't add anything to the top line or to the bottom line until something goes wrong, right? So it's really about spending as little as possible to ensure that you have the recovery capabilities that you need for your business. And that's what we've been focusing on in terms of the development and the improvements to this product line over the past 3 years. So in version 6.3, we believe that we offer industry-leading levels of scalability, functionality, data reduction, resiliency, performance, and reliability. As Steve mentioned, in version 6.1, we took out the database that was running TSM from the beginning and replaced it with a DB2 database. This is, the state-of-the-art, best database in the world. And, 59 out of the top 59 banks rely on DB2 to run their businesses. We're using that now as the core of TSM. TSM administrators don't have to worry about it. It's all under the covers. You don't need to have DB2 skills, but it gives you that functionality, the resiliency, the reliability, and also the scalability that'll take us to that next level. The other area that we're focusing on is this theme of unified recovery management, whereby rather than having individual tools to handle disaster recovery or remote offices or desktops and laptops or virtual machines, we're bringing it all into one product set so that you can manage it all together from one place. And I think that's really important, especially as you want to ensure that when something goes wrong, anything goes wrong, you're going to be able to be confident that you're going to be able to recover. If you've got lots of different tools with lots of different logons and skill sets and such, that becomes a real question mark. So those are the things that we've been working on over the last 3 years. And this slide I'll go through pretty quickly. There's a lot of data on here, but it's really for your background information. In terms of the scalability, we've increased the scalability of TSM by 100% each of the last 3 years. So in version 5.5, we were able to manage 500 million objects in a single TSM server. With 6.3, we can now manage 2 billion objects, or 4 billion objects, I'm sorry, in a single server. So that's a scalability improvement of 8x over 3 years. We've added deduplication throughout the product, and I'll show you a slide before I turn it back over to Steve that shows you that we're really serious about data reduction and reducing the amount of data that you are storing in your backup environment. We simplified administration in a number of ways, and we're improving the service levels and availability of your entire environment, both through the stability and manageability of TSM, but also enabling you to do more frequent backups, faster restores, limiting that downtime both in terms of backups and restores. Unified recovery management, as I mentioned, we're covering now everything from desktop and laptop all the way to mainframe computers, all from a single environment, in remote offices, in disaster recovery sites, all around the world, all from a single interface. And for our ZOS, our mainframe customers out there, we've added some new features in this new version that allows you to use your mainframe attached storage in your backup environments, leveraging all the improvements we've made in TSM 6. So that's pretty exciting for those folks. So what we're going to talk about today in terms of HyperIP and how it works with TSM is about a new feature that we added in version 6.3 around replication for disaster recovery. And this is pretty exciting. This adds another level. We've always had the ability to move data from one site to another within TSM using what we call copy pools. So you say you select a set of data within your TSM repository and copy it to another repository. Kind of kludgy, but it worked. But this is now real, true replication built into the system that allows you to select by client data which data you want to send to another site, to another TSM server, so that it can be standing by as like a hot standby to be able to restore that data should your production site go down. We've made this as efficient as possible in terms of sending only incremental data across the wire. So TSM is built on incremental forever or progressive incremental backups. So we're only backing up incremental data. We're never doing full backups. We extended that now to this replication. So we're only sending that data that's changed from day to day or from backup to backup over this wire. We've also made it scheduled so that you can say, do send this replication data over the wire when maybe the WAN isn't saturated with production applications. Also, selecting which data to replicate, which not to. So you can set different recovery capabilities that way. But even though we've limited the amount of data that we're trying to send over the wire, some the bandwidth is still expensive, and you still want to limit it even more. And that's where the NetEx HyperIP solution comes in terms of accelerating the amount of data that goes over the wire, reducing that bandwidth requirement, and Steve will cover that in a lot more detail. But with this new capability that we've added here, it's very flexible. You can have a source and a target, like we have shown on this diagram here, site A replicating to site B being your disaster recovery site. Or it could be source to source. So site A and site B can both be production servers, production sites. And so site B can be replicating to site A replicating to site B, and they can be failover for each. And you can also do many-to-one and round robin. It's very flexible in terms of who's doing protection for either. So it's a very, very flexible and powerful solution. So my last slide here is kind of my unified recovery management slide. There's a lot to take in here, but really what it says is that we take all this complexity around remote offices and branch offices, everything's going on in the data center, including virtual machines, including snapshots from hardware-based snapshots, including your DR site, and really boiling it down into the one management interface along the bottom. You can manage all this from one place. You log in for your TSM Admin Center. You can monitor and report on how backups are going in your remote offices, how it's going on your desktops and laptops, how it's going in your virtual machines, how it's going in terms of disaster recovery and replicating to your DR site. All of that can be done from one site. So that's really powerful stuff. And it'll really reduce the amount of cost you're spending in terms of managing and monitoring your backup environment. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Steve to talk about the HyperIP solution. Thanks, Steve.
Great. Rich, thank you very much for joining today, and I'd like to thank all the folks that have signed up. I hope that you understand from a TSM perspective, you have a mature product that customers are used to using. Now with the capability of replication or remote backup or many-to-one and mesh type configurations, you have the ability now with the HyperIP product to enable that replication and backup to perform much, much better. HyperIP is a very mature product, and I'd like to talk a little bit about what we've done with replication and backup applications in the industry, and those specifically around TSM. NetEx has been around for the better part of 12 years, and in 1999 we spun out of Storage Technologies, STK, but the core code that's inside of HyperIP has been around for a long time. We'll talk about who we are, what HyperIP is, what we do to accelerate TSM, some use cases, what the value might be, and I've got a lot of links and referrals over to Partner World, the Global Solutions Directory, and our website, and those will be included on the presentation. NetEx came out of Storage Tech in 1999, and most of our experience has been around moving data more efficiently. We have a lot of experience around storage industry, the storage networking field, and we're about accelerating applications, whether it's backup, recovery, or replication. What if you're doing data migrations? Maybe you're consolidating data centers or turning up a new site, and you need to accelerate moving that data from one site to another with whatever applications you're choosing to use. Maybe that archive or that data will reside in an in-house or private cloud, or maybe in a public cloud or cloud storage scenario. With that, HyperIP enables all of these scenarios to perform better, and we're deployed in the enterprise, the SME, and the small to medium business infrastructure within IT today. Our corporate offices are located just outside of Minneapolis, Minnesota. We have channel managers that basically handle North America, Europe and the Middle East and Africa, as well as Asia Pac. And we are strictly a channel model, so resellers and business partners from IBM can source HyperIP for TSM applications or IBM apps that need to be accelerated over the WAN. We're a 24/7, 355 support shop, and we're there to help you basically with HyperIP. So in a WAN environment supporting TSM and the Tivoli suite, the biggest issues that we find when you introduce the WAN into enterprise architecture is making sure that the backup and replication windows are met, and that those windows and that replication can be bidirectional. So not only do we have to make sure the backups or the replications occur on time, but when you need to recover that server, that cluster, that site, that your recovery time objectives are significantly reduced with our product. So what we basically do is reduce the latency that happens when you put distance between facilities. Or if you're using a lossy infrastructure, we basically flatten those issues and mitigate the effects of latency and packet loss with HyperIP, allowing you to get the full use of the WAN bandwidth that you have between the facilities that you're moving data. Now, the scalability of HyperIP scales with your WAN. So the same virtual appliance that you apply in a site that uses a simple T1 to a remote office can support 2 data centers with a gig pipe in between. So we grow with you and your needs and your ability to deploy TSM servers in your infrastructure. If other applications need to share that same link or that same pipe, HyperIP has the capability of taking those applications that would impact that WAN and rate limiting them through HyperIP. So your backup, recovery, and replication runs by time of day, rate limiting capabilities, not impacting other applications that are using that WAN, maybe desktop or client server or just simple internet HTTP. We have the capability of optimizing both remote backup and replication across the WAN environment. We scale to any type of configuration in your architecture, whether it's a hub and spoke config where there's a central repository and a lot of remote offices, or mesh sites if you're building a global cluster and you want the ability to make that global cluster look like it's local, or have the ability to move more data more efficiently over the WAN by reducing the data transfers by up to 90%. HyperIP improves backup, recovery, and replication apps. Where TSM is concerned, it allows you to basically utilize the entire capacity between your locations, whether it's remote offices or data center to data center. We only retransmit traffic that didn't make it, not entire blocks, not entire jobs. We have a block-level data movement that allows you to keep a pipe full. We compress that data within the block, so block-level compression for data reduction is much more efficient. And then the rate limiting of TSM or any other backup or replication app by time of day allows you to use any percentage of that link when you need it for the windows that you're trying to meet. Now this next slide talks about a case study of an MSP managed service provider out of Dublin, Ireland. Basically, Triangle implemented TSM and HyperIP together that because the native performance of TCP over their WAN did not make the window requirements needed on the infrastructure they had for their customer. Also, whenever replication occurred or the movement of data occurred, it impacted other applications that were using that link. So basically, Triangle implemented TSM over HyperIP to improve the backups by in excess of 6x, reducing restore windows and backup windows from hours down to minutes. This allowed RTOs to be met, and they did this with a virtual appliance requiring no hardware footprint or physical box to be deployed. HyperIP is a virtual appliance that deploys inside of VMware or Hyper-V and allows you to obtain these performance improvements across an infrastructure without having to put a physical box in. They were able to rate limit off-site backups on a shared link, eliminating telco burst charges. So when a provider provides bandwidth to an infrastructure, especially if it's MPLS, there are bandwidth charges that occur above and beyond the window or the top end of that provisioned circuit. HyperIP can rate limit any application that comes through moving data to the top end of the rate limit function or the ceiling of their provisioned circuit. This basically allowed the customer to see improvement without having to buy a bigger pipe. And this allowed the MSP Triangle to host VR or their cloud storage solution more efficiently using HyperIP. So in a very simple logical diagram, if you look, HyperIP is the logical path here on the red line. It allows the TSM client or the server that's moving data to a remote server repository or even a remote DR site to allow you to improve the performance. The footprint of HyperIP in a virtual machine only requires 9 gig of disk, a gig of memory, a single 2 gigahertz CPU, and allows you to basically deploy this by a download from NetEx.com. You bring up a virtual appliance in less than an hour. You allow the footprint to be built and move the data through HyperIP via routing, via a gateway, or via a persistent route in the server that you're running TSM on. There are best practices documents as well as application notes available inside of Partner World and at NetEx.com. Applications are logically sent through HyperIP, while other applications that are running now run through the WAN on a shared basis. HyperIP accelerates the apps that come through the technology. Let's talk a moment about use cases. Where do you deploy HyperIP in certain cases? If you're looking to move data off-site, whether it's with backup or replication, HyperIP is going to improve that, reduce the requirements of the bandwidth as well as the windows by upwards of 90%. If you're looking to outsource DR or storage services using maybe the IBM CSP2 platform or using an MSP service to an infrastructure as a service provider, if you're looking to move cloud storage, DR in a public or private or hybrid cloud off-site, HyperIP can enable that to be done much more efficiently and much more cost-effective. If you're looking to do data center replication, or if you're an MSP that wants to replicate data between yourself and your customers, HyperIP has that capability. If you're looking to do basically virtual machine migrations inside of Hyper-V or inside of VMware with vMotion, HyperIP can improve the movement of virtual machine migrations dramatically, upwards of 6x, over any size WAN, over any distance, and over any packet loss that you might have. This allows you to implement data migrations or DR services over much more inexpensive IP-based links. Consolidations and migrations are done considerably more efficient and much more cost-effective across the board. So what are some additional benefits? We talked about this. We're software, no additional hardware. We run in a virtual appliance. And we have the capability of completing a solution. If you're looking at a DR or a data protection app from IBM or a TSM product, HyperIP can enable that and improve a good app and even make it better. So what we've done is we basically set this up to be easily downloaded from our website or from the VMware Virtual Appliance Marketplace. You can request an evaluation for 30 days, and you can try HyperIP for whatever applications you're trying to accelerate. And what's nice is HyperIP is an OpEx expenditure. It allows you to purchase a HyperIP annual subscription that's renewed every year. It's a lower cost of entry because it does not require capitalized hardware. So you can basically bring in HyperIP, whether your link size is 2 megabits a second or 800 megabits a second. HyperIP is priced by throughput depending on the throughput you need for the applications that HyperIP is optimizing. We'll smooth those burstiness of apps on the WAN, cap your provision circuit limits, and allow you to simply implement, do a proof of concept, or deploy HyperIP in less than a couple of hours. HyperIP is supported through our centralized support facility in Minneapolis 24/7, 365 days a year. So basically, that's an explanation of HyperIP. We're all over the social media space. If you would, check us out on Twitter. We're @HyperIP. Follow us. Friend us on Facebook. Take a look at what we're doing in the YouTube world. We have videos out there for training, education, and even a little fun there, and making fun of some other technologies. But basically, HyperIP is available for download and for testing. And if you'd like to see what the community is about, go to our blog. We have done some blogging with IBM, and we have content within the storage blogs and the Tivoli blogs at IBM also. IBM has HyperIP inside of the ISM library, the Global Solutions Directory, and there are IBM links to presentations and replays of webinars we've done like this, as well as a partner world link if you're a reseller or a business partner of IBM. You have the capability of reaching out to all of this collateral and information on HyperIP. And then on the HyperIP websites, either URL works, hyperip.com or netex.com, and all of our product information, support information, and information if you're a business partner and you would like to resell HyperIP, please feel free to register or just contact us at sales@netex.com, and we'll be happy to come back to you with information. Also, these links that are embedded here for IBM around the Tivoli portfolio and the blogs that occur within the Tivoli portfolio are all here on the presentation. If anyone has any questions or comments, you can reach me through email. It's steve.thompson@netex.com, or reach out to us via our website, sales@netex.com, and we'll be happy to talk with you. Rich, I'd like to thank you for joining, and all of those that joined for the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.